Heading into this season, you were talking about a Philadelphia Eagles team that has enjoyed a nice little run over the past couple of years. They absolutely have. A couple seasons back, they're the Super Bowl champions. And that was all the while their franchise quarterback Carson Wentz, who was playing at an MVP of the league level, goes down late in the year against the Rams with that torn ACL. In steps Nick Foles and eventually gets hot in the playoffs. And you end up beating Tom Brady and the Patriots in the Super Bowl with your backup QB. How crazy is that? And then you turn around in 2018 here. The Philadelphia Eagles struggle throughout the year. Then they kind of get it going late in the year, find the rhythm again behind Nick Foles, make it into the playoffs, go into Chicago, upset the Bears in the wild card round thanks to double doink, and make it to the divisional round before they end up getting booted. So that's 2 straight years of success for the Philadelphia Eagles, although you knew that the landscape was going to change a little bit for this team heading into 2019 because you were either going to have to make a big decision with Carson Wentz or a big decision with Nick Foles, and clearly the decision was made, and the right decision was made. Nick Foles is not the guy. It was time to say thank you for everything, go get your money, but it's not going to be here. Carson Wentz is the guy we've invested more in terms of draft pick currency into. He's the one that our future is tied to. He is the guy, for better or worse, whether you like it or not, for some of you Eagles fans that never like anything, he's going to be the guy that you're going to have to roll with for the long term. So that's what happened. Nick Foles went off to Jacksonville. The Eagles ended up taking a risk and putting big money into Carson Wentz, extending him for a long time, which was kind of curious considering some of the injury troubles he's had over the first 3 years of his career. That's what you were kind of looking at into 2019 is there's no Nick Foles going to come in and save the day. There's none of that. It's Carson Wentz's show, and he's got to make it work. And when you look at the story of the season, how kind of things played out, it was a rough go the first 3 months of the year for the Philadelphia Eagles. They were 5-7, and they just didn't look great. How much more can I really say? You know, even when they were winning some games, like even when they were beating my Bears in the middle of the year, they didn't look great. They didn't look impressive. They certainly didn't look like a divisional champ or a playoff winner to me. But yet, sitting at 5-7 with 4 weeks to go, the schedule had lined up so perfectly for them. In that NFC least, all 4 of the remaining games were against divisional opponents in that trash bag dumpster fire of a division. It just couldn't play out much better than that for the Philadelphia Eagles. You get the Giants twice, the Redskins, and then you get the Week 16 matchup against the Dallas Cowboys. Like, dominating your division that last month, you win the division, make the playoffs, and get to host a playoff game. Sometimes it is better to be fortunate and lucky and take advantage of a situation than to actually be good. And that's exactly what the Philadelphia Eagles did. They ran through that NFC least the last 4 weeks of the year, went 4-0 in those 4 games, beat up on the Cowboys in Week 16, held on to win in Week 17 over the Giants, and ended up winning this division again. How crazy is that? But then they went on to the playoffs, lost in the wild card round to the Seattle Seahawks. You know, Carson Wentz, he finally gets through a season healthy. He does the best with a depleted receiving core in that offense. And then you get to this moment in time. It's early in the game. This could be potentially a big game, big moment in Carson Wentz's career and kind of changes the trajectory and the arc of his Philly story. And here he goes down, and Jadeveon Clowney hits him from behind, hits him in the head. Carson Wentz has a concussion, and he's out for the rest of the game. And you're trying to put your hopes in 40-plus-year-old Josh frickin' McCown, who at some point in time, apparently during the game, tore his hamstring off his dang leg. The hell. So if you're an Eagles fan, you're probably raging about so many things, even though the fact your team has made the playoffs for the past 3 consecutive seasons, including winning a Super Bowl in there. But Philly be Philly, and you do you. But realistically, you probably knew that you weren't long for the playoffs anyway, although you have to be still disappointed with the way it finished because you feel like the Seattle Seahawks were able to get fortunate and lucky in your place by not having to face you at anywhere near full strength, which was part of the story this year. You know, you finally had Carson Wentz healthy and playing every game, and he really did his best in a tough spot. Second-round pick Miles Sanders got in his rhythm and was better as the year went along, and was a more versatile weapon in that offense for the Eagles. But then you only get 10 games out of Alshon Jeffrey, 11 games out of Nelson Aguilar, a whopping 3 games out of Deshaun Jackson, who was supposed to be a difference maker in that Eagles receiving corps. It was really hard for this team. Got some injuries to Zach Ertz and so forth. Injuries on the offensive line, losing Brandon Brooks late in the year for the season. It just felt like the hits just kept coming and kept getting worse, specifically for the Eagles on that offensive side of the ball. Their run defense certainly didn't hurt them. They were third in the league in total yards allowed, but their secondary still stunk. Maybe not as god-awful bad as they've been the past couple of years, but they were still really bad. And all of that combined to a team that I personally think got about as far as it could. And it's interesting for me to see some people talk about Doug Peterson and criticize him sometimes. You look at the success over the past 3 years and look at the situation. He's done a really damn good job. I certainly would take him in Chicago over frickin' Matt Nagy. That's for damn sure. But anyways, looking ahead to the Eagles and what comes next, you look at their draft class, first-round pick Andre Dillard, got some looks on the offensive line. His long-term position is certainly going to be, you would think, left tackle replacing long-term guy Jason Peters. Maybe that comes as soon as 2020. If you're an Eagles fan, you hope he's able to step in and he's able to play up to the first-round draft status. Miles Sanders certainly had flashes, certainly had moments. And he's a guy that you would expect even more out of in 2020. And then J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, the second-round pick wide receiver from Stanford. Again, you saw some moments out of him, and you would possibly expect you'll get more out of him in 2020, and they're probably going to need more out of him. In terms of this team and their cap space and their kind of overall roster flexibility situation, even with the long-term extension they gave to Carson Wentz, the way they structured it, they got over $40 million in cap space here, which is a good thing potentially because they got a lot of free agents, although some of these free agents I don't think they're going to be particularly pressed to bring back. Are they really going to be that worried whether they bring back Nelson Aguilar or not? I don't think they will be. Jordan Howard, probably not. He was a guy that was worth the roll of the dice. You didn't give up much for him in terms of a draft pick. Probably not worth paying him. You feel like Miles Sanders, your long-term starter. How much are you really dying to bring back Ronald Darby? How good do you think he really is? You look at Jason Peters. He's in his late 30s. He's had a hell of a run, a great career there in Philly, that's for sure. But when all is said and done, you did take Andre Dillard for a reason. Is it time to move on from him, or is he just going to retire anyways? Then some of the other guys on their defense, like Nigel Bradham, Vinnie Curry, Timmy Jernigan, you would imagine they might bring back some of those guys. But you look at this and you say, for this Eagles team, you got to kind of figure out where you're going to go next. Are you going to try and retool and reload, or are you going to try and rebuild a little bit? Because it feels like this team could go one of two directions. They can either fall off a cliff pretty quickly because they get old and then they don't replace those old guys with new, fresh faces, or if they retool and rekey and reload in the right places, they could be right back in the Super Bowl race next year. They've got their 21st overall pick in round 1, along with enough draft picks. They got second, third, fourth round picks. They got a couple of fifths and a sixth. So they've got some draft pick currency to work with, and they're going to need it, especially on the defense. They need to invest heavily, early, and often on that side of the ball. Corner is obviously still a need for them. They're going to invest at least once there, you would figure, early, and probably multiple times throughout the draft. And you look at that defensive line, when you talk about guys like Derek Barnett and so forth, they're okay, but they're not special and they're not game breakers. They need a game breaker outside that can consistently get after the quarterback and wreak havoc, similar to what a Fletcher Cox can do on the inside. Then I look at that linebacking core. I still don't like their linebacking core. I think they could use a really speedy, multiple dimension option in that linebacking core outside. Possibly use an upgrade, a long-term upgrade over Malcolm Jenkins at safety. Perhaps the biggest need they have on offense is going to be wide receiver, and I wouldn't be surprised if this team invests in multiple picks on the wide receiver position. And again, it's a pretty good wide receiver class to be able to do that. But they do have to get better on defense. While sure, the injuries that they suffered on offense certainly did not help, and that is absolutely true. It certainly did not help. If that defense had played better in key moments and key spots, maybe those losses on offense wouldn't have hurt as much. And it just feels like when you're talking about the Eagles, they just can't get that secondary right, and they just can't play at a high enough level to where you can really count on them or trust them. If you can fix that area, and you can do that, then this Eagles team could be back in this position again in 2020. If not, they're probably best suited to sit there and be in the same situation again in 2020 like they were in 2018, like they were in 2019, and figuring out a way the last month of the season how they can rally together and make the playoffs. Because otherwise, it could get bad in Philly pretty quickly.